Hello, this is Ian Stewart, and welcome to the People of Earth Podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the People of Earth Podcast, where we interview the top performers in the New York City world music scene. Before we begin this week's episode, I have an announcement to make. Tonight, Wednesday, April 11th, People of Earth is performing at Rockwood Music Hall, Stage 2. The set starts at 10:15 p.m., and you can purchase tickets online at peopleofearthmusic.com. In addition to that, we have two more performances coming up in the near future. For those of you in the Philadelphia area, we will be playing at the Painted Bride Fundraiser Dance Party on May 19th at 7 p.m. Again, that's in Philadelphia, not New York. For those of you who are listening, it's a chance to catch us out of town. Of course, you can find all information about that at peopleofearthmusic.com. In addition to that, we have another performance in May, just 3 days later on May 22nd at 8 p.m. back in New York at Brooklyn Bowl. We're returning to Brooklyn Bowl, this time supported by the amazing Los Hacheros. If you don't know who Los Hacheros are, you really should. So keep an eye out for that. I'll be announcing all information on that show and all of our other shows as the dates grow closer. Okay, all announcements aside, let's get to today's podcast episode. Today is a little different. It's going to be, I guess it could be interpreted as another interview with me, but this time it's Victor Pablo interviewing me, and we're specifically talking about kind of the origins of this podcast, this People of Earth podcast that I'm very thankful that so many of you have been listening to. And I just thought I would, for fun, shed some light on kind of where this idea came from in the first place. This episode is kind of fun because it was actually recorded the same day as Victor Pablo's interview. So after we were done with Victor's interview, we kind of turn things around and he interviewed me, and it was really loose. We didn't write anything down or discuss any questions beforehand. We just kind of went with it, and it's always a blast talking to Victor about just about anything. So anyway, I'm not going to give too much away because you're going to be hearing a lot of my voice in this interview. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this somewhat different episode of the People of Earth podcast with myself, Ian Stewart, and Victor Pablo. And please tune in next week where we will be resuming our usual programming. Thanks a lot and hope you enjoy.
All right, so welcome to the People of Earth podcast. The tables have turned, and now I'm interviewing. I get to interview Ian Stewart, bassist, musician, freelancer in New York. Also writes reviews, right, for Timba.com and such other operations, edits books and whatnot.
I still do that now and then, yeah.
Does a bunch of things, entrepreneur, or entrepreneurial at least.
That is yet to be said.
And the host of the People of Earth podcast and the creator of People of Earth podcast. And here we are to ask you, how did it begin? What are the origins of the People of Earth podcast?
Yeah, so it's actually a very recent thing. Back in February, March, April of 2017, I was a couple different factors kind of came into play. I was reading a lot of books by kind of cultural analysts like Malcolm Gladwell, for example. I'd kind of gone through a few of his books, like The Tipping Point, Outliers, books like that were kind of, talking about, I don't know, like, have you read Outliers by any chance?
No.
Okay. Well,
tell me about that. So I have no clue what that is.
It's a book kind of about these kind of cultural outliers, guys that are kind of exceptions to the rule and stuff like that. So it's a long story, and to be honest, I have to read it again because it's been a while. But I got really inspired by kind of his by Malcolm's storytelling ability. I found his writing very compelling, and the way that he kind of sought out these different individuals and kind of linked them all together in a very particular narrative was fascinating to me. So I was inspired by that, and I was also inspired by talking to Jeremy Smith, percussionist.
He's an inspirational guy.
He's an inspirational guy, and it was for a couple specific reasons. For one, also because he was a Malcolm Gladwell fan too, and a fan of a couple other, guys like that. And we kind of came together and kind of realized that we were both really into this kind of stuff. But I got really inspired by his whole approach to, his thing is that he learns like pretty much like any style of world music really easily and really well.
Yeah, he does.
In this very systematic kind of way. So, he kind of almost reminded me of a character in one of the, these real characters, in these books. So it's like, and I'm an author, and a writer. I always have been, along with being a musician. So I kind of started to form the ideas of what I wanted to be like my own Malcolm Gladwell kind of narrative nonfiction book. And the initial idea of it was...
It started with a book. That was the original idea.
A book idea, yes.
Wow.
Yes. So then... so I interviewed him. He was the first guy that I ever interviewed, and we met at like Sweetleaf in Long Island City, over right across the street from Blend on the Water. I don't know if you know that.
No, I don't know.
They have salsa bands there, actually.
Yeah?
Yeah, on Center Boulevard. So, so I started with him, and then I got inspired by his story, and I kind of came up with this, I'll write it about musicians like him and myself, guys that specialize in learning how to play styles of music from cultures outside of their own. Because New York's full of them. Mm-hmm. That's like... This is the mecca where they all come
That's
to,
true.
To live out our crazy, insane dreams. So so then I started, finding other people like that, again, guys that were kind of outliers in my opinion, like Panayota Sandreu, Josh Deutsch, Yayo Serica, the list goes on. Keito Ogawa, Moto Fukushima, these Japanese guys that play Afro-Peruvian music and all this kind of stuff. And I made a list. I remember I sat down, I made this huge list in my notebook, and I just started messaging these guys on Facebook, every day, just arranging these interviews. And they all said yes, which was really cool, and I haven't even gotten through the entire list at this point, but every single one that I messaged said yes. Ben Zwerin from Angelique Kidjo's group, and it was cool. I would just go to their houses. A lot of them, some of them I knew already, some of them I'd never met before, and we would just sit down with my iPhone recording, and it wasn't meant to be a podcast at all. I just wanted to record what they were saying because it was a lot more efficient.
Of course, yeah. To later transcribe what you need or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So then when I did Yayo Serica's interview, he was like, "What is this for? Is this for a book? Or are you gonna make a podcast out of it or something?" And that was the first time that I heard the word podcast. I knew what podcasts are, and I listened to them and stuff, and I really liked them. But
that was the first time you considered that a outlet for this project.
Yeah. And I considered a couple different things. It was actually Yayo's interview was really important because he also started to talk about other people in the New York music scene, like venue owners, like Ilhan from New Blue, Freddie from Terrassa, the guys from drum and all that kind of stuff, and kind of the part that they played and all of it. I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. that kind of goes outside of what I'm trying to do. But that sounds like a really great idea. And I was like, well, maybe there'd be a way to include that. And then, a few months went by, and I ran into Panagiotis again, actually, at one of Gonzalo Grau's shows at Subrosa. And, and it had been a few months. I think I did him in March. I think I did his interview in March or something like that. Because I was on my old phone, so I still have to figure out how to get his interview off of there. But, and he was like, oh, I was like, and he also mentioned the podcast idea too. So then I heard it from two different people, and I remembered a conversation that I had with Jeremy as well, where he talked about the fact that, he was into, so-and-so's podcast and so-and-so's podcast, because he's like a podcast nut.
Yeah.
He loves podcasts. So, so that was kind of an idea on the back burner for a while. It's like, well, maybe I could do both. Who knows?
Yeah.
I was still very, I'm a writer. I was still very married to that book idea. Like, I'm going to do this, I can pump out a book in less than a year. I've done it before. What
was your first book?
The book with Benitez.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, that was my first book.
That's right.
That was my first book that I finished.
Okay.
That was my first book that I ever finished.
That actually made it to publishing.
That actually made it, yeah. Yeah, there was I was going to do my first idea for a book that Kevin Moore from Timid.com still wants me to do. He's constantly harping on me to actually finish this. Was I transcribed all of the bass parts from the first 3 Bamboleo albums.
No.
Note for note, start to finish.
No, man, I want to see that.
Yeah. They're all in Sibelius.
Yes.
Yeah. They're all in Sibelius.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so he was like, you have to do that. It's he's like, you have to.
That's a good voice to have in your head, pushing for that.
Yeah. No, exactly. So that'll happen one of these days, But so anyway, so that was the first book that I finished, and obviously I have my second book with Benitez that's almost ready to go out. But so I was like, but I wanted to write something that wasn't an instructional book. I wanted to write something that was a little different.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was really into that book idea, really gung-ho about that. And then as I was still working on the book with, about John, the second volume about John, and realized that, I couldn't work on 2 books at once, but still had all this content lying around.
Mm-hmm.
And also the fact that I noticed that nobody was reading the blog on my website that I was doing. I was kind of saying maybe just doing written content, is not necessarily the way to go. So I started considering more and more the world music podcast idea. I had this, so I was like, okay, well, I can include more people because a podcast can go on indefinitely. Obviously, a book is a very fixed thing.
That's true.
Yeah, podcast can go on as many episodes. I mean, the Joe Rogan experience is on 1,098 episodes now. And so it kind of the podcast idea became more and more appealing, and every time I saw Yayo a couple times after that, he kept on, it's like, man, if you do this podcast, I'll listen to it because I love podcasts. And I was like, okay, well, I guess this podcast is a good idea. So I didn't have a good name for it. Every name, I can't even remember the names I was coming up for the podcast. They were so bad.
Try. I want to hear one. I want to hear one, man.
I don't even know at this point. So
we'll find out.
So you have to pry it out of me. But so I remember Gabe and I, of course, because we all have our conversations with Gabe about future aspirations, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That was always Gabe's bonding experience with me. Our bonding experience with it together. It's someday we're going to do this, this, and this, and this, and that. He had the band idea. I've had all these different entrepreneurial ideas of man, we could take People of Earth. When People of Earth finally had a name.
Mm-hmm.
We could do that. We could create a world music educational website out of
Mm-hmm.
it. For people to subscribe to. Where we could invite our friends to come and do video tutorials and stuff. We could have People of Earth doing all these rhythm section tutorials and things like that. Not to say that we're not going to maybe we definitely still could do that, but
Yeah.
but that idea that People of Earth could be more than just a band.
Yes.
That it could be, many things, and it's not really just a band. It's a collective. It's got other people different people bringing in compositions, like yourself and so.
And Ivan, yeah.
Exactly. It's a very malleable idea. So.
Yes.
So I remember when the three of us were rehearsing at your practice space.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was like where it kind of clicked, where it's like, hey, can I just call this podcast idea People of Earth?
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, I was there.
Yeah. Well, of course, you were the one with the key. Of course you were there.
I didn't realize that's when it happened.
Yeah, that was
Wow.
it. And then literally, like, I texted him the next day. I'm like, you're cool with this, right? Because, like, I'm using your trademark name, basically.
Yeah.
Like, and he's like, yeah, go for it. And I bought the account for it that day and started rummaging through all my my old recordings of all the interviews that I did back in March and April. Most of them were in April, because that was when I had a lot of time on my hands, because that's when I didn't have the Guantanamera 3-day-a-week gig anymore, so I had a lot of time to go out. So and I started listening to these again. And I was like, yeah, these are actually, some of them are pretty good as they are. This doesn't really need a whole lot of editing. And I was like, I wonder how many of these would actually work. And before I knew it, I was like, wow, I have like 18 potential episodes already.
Beautiful.
Not including the People of Earth members yet, or any of that. With all these like cool people, because some of them have to be 2 parts. And,
right.
I don't like them being more than an hour and a half. So
for sure.
So yeah.
So everything just kind of seemed to point towards the podcast.
Yeah.
Everything just kind of seemed to lead you that way.
Yeah. It was not a medium that I thought was a possibility for me, because I am, writing is just something that I've always done.
Mm-hmm.
Something I've always done. For some reason, I've always been good at it. So that was like, which is funny, because it wasn't a thing that I used in my career until I moved to New York.
Mm.
That was when the Timid.com thing happened, which was pretty short-lived in the amount of time that I did it regularly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I did it for probably my first year and a half here in New York, like, really actively. And then...
What was your role with Team.com? What kind of stuff were you writing?
I did just mainly concert and album reviews. And it went towards more album reviews, because... I could do them on my own time. Obviously,
sure.
For concerts, as I started to become more busy as a working musician, it's kind of hard to be in 2 places at once.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I also, I've always felt really funny about writing concert. I felt like I could never write concert reviews for concerts that I played on. So there became a real time management issue.
Yeah, because you can't be impartial.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was. So that's when it kind of, I still do stuff for Timmy.com, but that stuff kind of became a conflict of interest after a while,
mm-hmm.
And as much as I'm very honored to have to still be considered part of Timmy.com. That's such a prolific website, and and I've had a pretty close relationship with Kevin Moore, because he's edited my book, I've edited some of his books, and we've always had this like back and forth, phone rapport. I've actually never met the guy in person.
Oh, really?
Never. I've never met Kevin in person, because he lives out in Santa Cruz.
Oh,
and I've been to California.
So jealous of him right now. He's being Santa Cruz.
Yeah, so he lives out there out in California, and has his operation over there. And yeah, we just
what a time to be alive, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
What a time to be alive.
So anyway, back to the podcast. Yeah, it was not something that I was considering. I didn't even think I was fit for it. I mean, I have this like super nasally, central New York accent. I cringe when I hear myself.
I feel like everybody cringes when they hear themselves. Man.
Sure,
that's one thing too.
Sure. Actually, I was texting Yayo when Yayo and I were texting back and forth when I put up his episode and stuff, and he's like listening to it. He's like, "Man, this interview is great, but man, I can't stand the sound of my voice." And I said, well, how do you think I feel? I hate the sound of my own voice, and now I have to hear it all the time. Like every day. So
you build up tolerance.
But the process has actually been a lot of fun, and one of the things I do want to mention about doing the podcast that's probably the most rewarding part of it, because I do them all in person. I don't do any of them like on by phone or Skype or anything like that. Because everyone lives here in town, so for the most part, it's not a huge sacrifice of time to go to somebody's place and do it. If I have like a day available or something.
Yeah.
So I prefer to do it that way because the kind of rapport you get with somebody when you're sitting down and interviewing them in person is actually really cool, and that was something I didn't really consider. I remember when I interviewed Pandiotis Andreu, and I remember like kind of getting that feeling. It was like as we were talking, and as we kind of forgot about the fact that we were in an interview and just kind of started talking as two people, and to kind of start shooting opinions and ideas back and forth, and just to kind of see him open up like that. Yayo was really, really similar too, like in that sense. It's like all of a sudden, like all these crazy stories are coming out, and and you can just kind of see them light up in a way, and that's something that I really, really enjoyed, because that's not something I get very often, in just kind of the normal day to day as musicians, everyone comes into like a rehearsal or a gig, and they just have like the time, they come in, just a few minutes before the gig starts, you kind of say hi and stuff, maybe you have some time on the break to talk, and you get a little taste of that, or maybe if you guys hang out at the gig afterwards, you have those rare, situations where like, you really get onto some good subject matter and stuff, but it's a rare thing, and for myself as someone that, has always been fairly, introverted and, has a, opening up to people like that, it's not something that really comes easy to me. So to kind of be in an environment where that happens with people that I really admire and respect, I think is a really cool thing to do on a regular basis. And you learn a lot too. Like when you hear how people view their own path, their own career, and the lessons that they've learned on the way. I find that all to be very fascinating and rewarding.
Not only that, but exactly what you said. The fact that you can see all these people, maybe in a gig or two or whatever, but that's not the place to have those conversations, and especially because you're competing for attention, with the music, or with the short amount of time that you have to eat something between the sets, or this and that.
Many factors.
But when you're down there, one-on-one with a person, that's what you're gonna do. You're gonna have that conversation, and you're in that. Like, I don't know, you're in that safe space to have an open conversation about that.
Absolutely.
And then us as listeners, we get to be literally a fly on the wall for that conversation. And, how many conversations would we not want to be a fly on the wall for?
Exactly. Yeah, in fact, somebody, a friend of mine, said that about my podcast, how it's like, man, it's cool how it just sounds like two guys in a room chatting. I think it sounds very natural.
Yeah.
I was like, oh man, okay, cool. Maybe I'm onto something here, and also the fact that it's the first. It's also like the first thing that I'd done online where I kind of saw like immediate results too. Like the minute I posted, like the first episode, like downloads just kind of started coming in, and after so many unsuccessful attempts at putting my own blog out, which was a huge ego blow for me as as a writer.
As a writer, yeah.
Yeah, as a writer, because I was like, oh, but that's my thing. That's my, that's where I really shine in my writing thing. And
you probably do, but it's a matter of, it's not the question of the quality. I guess it's more the question of, what are people gonna consume more readily?
It's about what works and what doesn't.
It's about what works and what doesn't.
Yeah. So, and this seemed to kind of work right off the bat. It's a, it's a medium that people are gravitating towards, because it's very easy to digest in a sense, because like you can do it while doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
Tons of people do podcasts because you can do it on the subway. You can
exactly.
do it while walking to the subway. You can do it while washing your dishes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a cool thing. You don't have to be actively engaged in it, but you can still be absorbing the information. Kind of like what you can do with like audiobooks almost. So yeah, that's how this all kind of came about. And I mean, I'm just like really looking forward to putting up the episodes that I have so far, because I have a pretty big backlog of them now.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's like I haven't stopped arranging interviews. I've got I think, how many more this month do I have? I can't really think of it right off the bat. So I have like a tentative thing maybe with like Rachel Tarian at the end of this week, and yeah. So but yeah, so. And it's cool. It's very, very fun and very unexpected, and I'm glad that like things kind of came together, and that I was able to put oddly enough, a very appropriate name to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got some cool. I've got a great, fairly short but really good interview with Juancho Herrera. He was really cool.
Beautiful.
And he's just a great guy in general.
I know.
What an amazing, positive person. And hell of a musician on top of that.
Yeah.
And Ben Zwerin. Ben Lapidus. I don't know if you know Ben. He's like...
I don't, but I'll find out on the podcast.
Yeah, he's an ethnomusicologist, expert on Changui, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
Definitely
he teaches at John Jay College. And Bobby Sanabria.
Mm-hmm.
And what I really want to do, and Joel Mateo we both agreed that I really need to do this. Have you ever talked to Ruben Rodriguez about
oh my God,
his
about anything?
Well, of course, but his whole thing, because he knows everything about like the New York studio scene, like from like the 80s especially. Yes. So yeah, he started. I was meeting with him a few weeks ago, because I needed to get a quote from him for a quote that I could put in my new book that's coming out.
Uh-huh.
And versus just texting it or emailing it to me, he had me like he was doing a session down in Long Island City, so I went and met him down there, and I just went there to record. And then he started going off on this tangent about all these studio musicians. I don't even know how we got on that subject. We were just shooting the shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like we tried to go do it inside at Woodbines on Vernon Boulevard.
Uh-huh.
And there was like some really loud woman, and we couldn't record anything. So we went. We just like sat on the hood of my car.
Hey, whatever works. Whatever works.
And it's like. And sure enough, like after I stopped my recording, he starts like talking about all this fascinating stuff, and I'm just like sitting here, just with like my jaw on the floor, like this is so cool. So
Ruben is a unique person for men to. You gotta have him on, man.
Exactly. I texted him already about it, so we'll see when he gets back to me. But it was funny. It was like I saw Joel like 2 weeks later, and he was like, bro, I was just having this conversation with Ruben in the studio the other day. We were recording with Steve Kroon. Dude, you gotta get him on your podcast. I was just thinking the same thing.
Yes, man. Yes.
So that's like another, cool like one that hopefully will happen sometime soon. So anyway.
Beautiful, man. Well,
yeah.
It's an exciting thing, man. It's an exciting thing. I feel like we need to hear these stories. And people want to hear these stories, you know.
Yeah.
Like, people want to hear these stories. I know I myself want to hear these stories and want to hear what musicians past and future and present have gone through and want to go through or have had to go through to do whatever it is that they have to do.
Isn't it amazing how it never gets old to hear that stuff? Like, I guess it's because it's what we talk about anyway when we, we're trying to get to know each other. I don't know. I'm sure there's a study about it somewhere. I don't know. I'm sure I'll find it.
You'll find it, and then you'll have the person in and tell us. It'll be another episode, man.
Yeah. Well, until then, I guess, once again, if you're trying to find out more information on People of Earth, you can go to peopleofearthmusic.com and also check out the podcast on ianstewartbass.com. And, Victor, thanks for interviewing me.
Well, thank you, Ian. Thank you for hosting this podcast, really. Thank you on behalf of all the listeners, I myself, and, keep in tune.
Till next time.
All right, that's it. That's all with that. Hope you enjoyed that somewhat different episode of the People of Earth podcast. Again, this was just for fun to break up the monotony a little bit, and it was an idea that I kind of, wanted to put into reality at some point in this podcast, and I've just been kind of keeping it around for a rainy day for the past few months. Again, for those of you who have made it this far, do not forget that tonight, Wednesday, April 11th, 2018, People of Earth, the band, is playing at Rockwood Music Hall, Stage 2 in Manhattan, New York City at 10:15 p.m. One set only, so be sure to make it if you can. And as always, you can find out more information on People of Earth, the band, as well as myself, Ian Stewart, at our respective websites, peopleofearthmusic.com and ianstewartbass.com. Thank you as always for listening, and see you next week.